Okay, gonna go ahead and get started. So, chapter 6. This one is, let me move this stuff out of the way. There and there so I can see the screen. So, contact basics, band plans, making contacts, and using repeaters. A typical telephone conversation, you have a greeting, you identify who is participating, and exchange your information, generally taking turns on the phone. And then when you're done, you give salutations and end the conversation. Well, in a typical ham contact or a QSO, it's very similar. We have a greeting, we identify who's participating, then we exchange information, generally taking turns. We give salutations, and then we end the conversation. So, all about radio manners. First of all, you need to speak clearly and distinctly. Remember, you can't see the person on the other side who's talking. Use phonetics when needed, and assume all communications are public. Choose your topics accordingly. Before transmitting, make sure the frequency is clear and that you are authorized to use it. Use your station identification and remember the 10-minute rule. Every 10 minutes, you need to clearly identify with your call sign. Frequencies are always shared. No one has a prior claim to a frequency. Tell that to some of the people on 80 meters. Schedules, nets, and pre-planned events. Oh, somebody joined and I can. Hello, yeah. Hey, Tony, you need to reset your audio because I'm hearing like chipmunks.
Chip and Dale.
Yeah, that's weird.
How about now?
Yay, winner.
Sorry, thanks.
Oh, you had the Mark Holt issue. Every time our friend Mark joins, he has Chippendales until he resets. That's weird.
Weird. Yeah, I set my microphone to switch it to a headset and then back again, and then I guess that kicked it into working.
Okay, good. Well, welcome. Let's see, where are we at? Oh, hang on a sec. I got one more. Okay, never mind. Thought somebody else was saying they can't join. So, yeah, frequencies are shared. No one has a prior claim to a frequency, and that includes schedules, nets, and pre-planned events. So you always need to be flexible and have a plan B. Generally, you give signal reports with the power level and avoid excess power. Yeah, send your QTH or your location, and sometimes it'll be in grid locators. Send your RST, which stands for readability on a scale of 1 to 5, your strength on a scale of 1 to 9, and the tone if you're in a CW, 1 to 9 on that. So for example, it would be your signal is 5.8, very good readability, and your strength is almost 100%. Advice and assistance. Radio and antenna tests or checks. Ham radio is self-regulated, and there are ARRL official observers listening in on different frequencies. It's a good idea to log your contacts either on paper or on computer. And it's nice to send QSL cards and participate in awards programs. Band plans. A band plan is a formal plan for organizing types of operations on a band. It's an informal agreement and not a regulation, intended for normal circumstances. Be flexible in times of heavy band use such as contacts, special events, and de-expeditions. Always have a plan B. Making your contacts in a repeater operation. Listen to see how the regulars are operating. To announce your presence, just say your call. Respond to a call with the station's call followed by your own call. Often used by a club or a group as a regional intercom. Repeater signal report, some examples. You are coming in full quieting. The signal is strong enough that no noise is heard. If somebody says you're scratchy, it's an occasional noise within your signal. If they report that you're fluttering, that could be multipath from a mobile station. And if they say you're in and out, that means you're occasionally copyable but mostly inaudible. On HF, using CW or SSB. CQ means I'm calling anyone. To answer, give the station's call followed by your call once or twice. Use of phonetics is common, and you generally take turns in the nets, in roundtables, and shared contacts. Breaking in. Wait for a pause, and then give your call. On Simplex FM, each user takes turn to transmit. Works for stations close to each other, and if you can hear the other station on the repeater input frequency, you can try Simplex. On 2 meters, the national calling frequency is 146.52 megahertz. On 70 centimeters, the Simplex calling frequency is 446.00 megahertz. A repeater review. A repeater is a specialized transmitter and receiver interconnected by a controller. Generally, it's located at a high place, and it receives and simultaneously retransmits your signal on a different frequency, and it dramatically extends the line of sight range. And here we have the diagram from before where you have a shared antenna, and the antenna receives the signal coming in to the duplexer. It comes over into the receiver, and then the receiver sends the speech back over to the transmitter on a transmitting frequency, and it's retransmitted out back through a duplexer on the different frequency and goes out through the antenna. Duplex communication is transmitting on one frequency while simultaneously listening on a different frequency. Repeaters use duplex communication. The output frequency is the frequency the repeater transmits on and you listen to. The input frequency is the frequency the repeater listens to and you transmit on. Things to know to use a repeater. You need to know the output frequency, the frequency offset, and therefore the input frequency, and the repeater's access tones if there are any. The repeater output frequency. Repeaters are frequently identified by their output frequency. I'll meet you on the 443.50 machine. That's the output frequency that they're referring to. Here, the specific frequency is used. Sometimes you'll hear, let's go to 94. Here, an abbreviation is a standard repeater channel is used, meaning 146.94 megahertz. Or you might hear, how about the NARL repeater? Here the repeater is referenced by the sponsoring club's name. Repeater repeater frequency offset. The offset frequencies, or the shift or splits, are standardized to help facilitate repeater use. In the 10-meter bands, it's usually offset by negative 100 kilohertz. On 6 meters, varying by region, could be either minus 500 kilohertz, minus 1 megahertz, or minus 1.7 megahertz. In 2 meters, it's usually plus or minus 600 kilohertz. In the 1.25 or the 220 megahertz range or band, it's minus 1.6 megahertz. In the 70 centimeters or 440 band, it's plus or minus 5 megahertz. In the 902 megahertz band, it's 12 megahertz offset. And in the 1296 megahertz band, it's 12 megahertz. There are plus and minus offsets depending on the plan. Different bands have different standardized amounts of offset. Repeater access tones prevents accessing multiple repeaters at once. Subaudible low frequency tone must be present before the repeater transmitter will turn on. Tones have various names depending on equipment manufacturer. Sometimes they're called CTCSS, or Continuous Tone Coded Squelch System, or PL if it's a Motorola trade name for the CTCSS, or a privacy code or tones. Sometimes they have DCS, which is a digital coded squelch. Access tones are usually published along with repeater frequencies. Could also be announced when a repeater identifies. For example, PL is 123.0, meaning a 123 hertz. Tones are generally programmed into the radio along with a frequency and offset. Repeater control. Repeater identification is usually Morse code or sometimes synthesized voice. Repeaters have the same ID requirements as you have. There's always a timeout protection, which protects against continuous transmission in the event of a stuck push-to-talk or a long-winded speaker. And if you're on the K7 LED and you're not in one of the rag chew nets, you'll get the alligator award. And usually the timeout is 3 minutes. A courtesy beep or tone signal timeout timer resets. May have an auto patch system for phone calls. Common problems not allowing you to hear is your off frequency, which causes audio distortion. Or if you have low batteries, you could have a weak signal or audio distortion. Or if you're in a poor location, you hear the repeater okay, but can't make or maintain a contact with the repeater. Or if you have the access tone off or wrong, the repeater is strong, but you can't access it. Repeater drops in and out of your receiver. That could be that your squelch setting is too high. Digital repeater systems. Repeaters are sometimes linked by the internet, and they use digital audio or voice over internet protocol, sometimes referred to as VoIP. It's similar to Skype, and it allows communication worldwide. Internet Linking Relay Project, or IRLP, and there's also Echolink, and they use access codes on system websites. DStar is both a repeater linking system and a digital voice protocol. DV, or digital voice mode, allows voice plus a 1200 bauds worth of data. DD mode, or digital data mode, allows for 100 kilobits per second data. Repeaters link together worldwide, and you can also call user to user based on your call sign. And currently an ICOM system, although Yaesu and Kenwood are also building digital systems. Now on for the fun practice questions. So go ahead and unmute and shout it out when you know it. Which of the following is a common repeater frequency offset in the 2-meter band?
-600. Okay. Yeah.
Yep, plus or minus 600 is the correct answer. What is the national calling frequency for FM simplex operation in the 2-meter band? That would be 146.520 megahertz. And sometimes you'll see hams with bumper stickers that just say 146.520. You'll know it's a ham. What is the common repeater frequency offset in the 70 centimeter band? 70 centimeters is plus or minus 5 megahertz. What is an appropriate way to call another station on a repeater if you know the other station's call sign? You'd say the station's call sign, then identify with your call sign.
Yeah, on the last question about 500 megahertz in Western Washington, we're always pluses on those. So we transmit low, we receive high.
Oh, okay.
Is that up to the state?
That's up to the repeater coordinator in the area. It's the hams to control the recommended frequencies.
Gotcha.
How should you respond to a station calling CQ? Transmit the other station's call sign followed by your call sign.
This is a polite hobby. They're first, you're second.
What is the meaning of the procedural signal CQ? What does CQ mean? That means calling any station. What brief statement indicates that you are listening on a repeater and are looking for a contact? Your call sign, or sometimes people will say Kilo Echo 7 Juliet India Mike listening. That's another way to kind of tell people. Which of the following is a guideline to use when choosing an operating frequency for calling CQ? This has a whole bunch of them. This is all of the above. Listen first to be sure that no one else is using the frequency. Then ask if the frequency is in use, and also make sure you are in your assigned band. What is the most common use of the reverse split function of a VHF and UHF transceiver? Reverse split is to listen on the repeater's input frequency. If you do a reverse split, then you can see if you can possibly, if like Daniel and I are real close using the same repeater and I can hear him on the input frequency, I can easily ask to switch to a simplex frequency and we can chat that way, not tying up the repeater. What term describes the use of a sub-audible tone transmitted along with normal voice audio to open the squelch of a receiver? That is the CTCSS, or the continuous tone codes squelch something or other. CTCSS. Which of the following could be the reason you are unable to access a repeater whose output you can hear? There's actually a few of these. I think this is another all of the above. Yep. One of the reasons could be that your improper transceiver offset, or the repeater may require a proper CTCSS tone from your transceiver, or the repeater may require a proper DCS tone from your transceiver.
The CTCS is the tone. In the United States, we use tones. Europe uses a tone burst, one beep that turn the transmitter on. And DCS or DSC, either way it's said, is a digital tone.
So they're not synonymous, but they're similar.
DCS and DSC are the same thing.
Okay,
But your regular analog tone is called either PL, which is a Motorola private line, or the CTCSS.
so those two CTCSS and DCS, they're synonymous, so why do we have two of them?
Well, CTCSS is in hertz, and then the DCS is a code. So you'll see DCS, I forgot how the different codes on it. I think there's only a couple of repeaters that I remember have DCS on them. But
So it's digitized, right?
it's a digital tone sequence.
And is CTCSS analog?
Is analog at a certain frequency, like 103.8 hertz.
Or 5, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's about 50 CTCSS tones.
But
Yeah.
that's helpful to know one's analog and one's digital. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Which Q signal indicates that you are receiving interference from other stations?
URM.
That would be the QRM, or man-made. Which Q signal indicates that you are changing frequency?
QSY.
Let's QSY to another frequency. That's a good way to remember it. The Y has a split, so you can jump to another frequency. Why are simplex channels designated in the VHF and UHF band plans? So that stations within a mutual communications range can communicate without tying up a repeater. What should be done when using voice modes to ensure that voice messages containing unusual words are received correctly? Spell the words using a standard phonetic alphabet. What is meant by repeater offset? That is the difference between the repeater's transmit frequency and its receive frequency. What might be the problem if you receive a report that your audio signal through the repeater is distorted or unintelligible? There's actually a few possibilities. First one is your transmitter may be slightly off frequency, or your batteries might be running low, or you could be in a bad location,
Like downtown Seattle, right?
like downtown Seattle in the concrete jungle. What is a grid locator? Grid locator is a letter and number designator assigned to a geographic location. How is access to some IRLP nodes accomplished? By using the DTMF signals. That's your touch tone frequencies. How might you obtain a list of active nodes that use voice over IP? By subscribing to an online service or from an online repeater list maintained by the local repeater frequency coordinator or from a repeater directory. And in Western Washington, it's www.ara.org. And if you're traveling or outside of here, the repeaterreference.com is the other good one. You can see the map of the United States and work your way down. When we're done with this, I'll share that in the chat room.
ARLL has one, but they charge $12.95 a year for it.
Yeah, we don't do. we're frugal. What must be done before you may use the Echolink system to communicate using a repeater? For the Echolink system, you must register your call sign and provide a proof of your license. What is meant by Voice over Internet Protocol, VoIP, as used in amateur radio? That is a method of delivering voice communications over the Internet using digital techniques. What is the Internet Radio Linking Project, IRLP? That is a technique to connect amateur radio systems such as repeaters via the Internet using a Voice over Internet Protocol or VoIP. Which amateur radio stations may make contact with an amateur radio station on the International Space Station, or ISS, using 2 meter and 70 centimeter band frequencies? Who can communicate with the ISS? Hello, ISS. Any amateur holding a technician class or higher license. So that's open to everybody, technician and above.
So how many watts do you need to reach them?
You can do it on with a good antenna. You can do it on 5-10 watts at the most. You see people up on YouTube with their little handy talkies making YouTube videos and doing it. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Most of them have a little handheld antenna that's, I guess you'd say it's a little Yagi, and you point it at the sky.
What is a band plan beyond the privileges established by the FCC? That is a voluntary guideline for using different modes or activities within an amateur band. What term describes an amateur station that is transmitting and receiving on the same frequency? If you're transmitting and receiving on the same frequency, that is called simplex. What is a talk group on a DMR digital repeater? A talk group is a way for groups of users to share a channel at different times without being heard by other users on the channel. Where may SSB phone be used in amateur bands above 50 megahertz? You'll usually find that in at least some portion of all of the bands above 50 megahertz. Which of the following describes a linked repeater network? It's a network of repeaters where signals are received by one repeater and are repeated by all the repeaters.
We,
And that,
hang on that one there, we have repeaters we tie from California through Montana. The Evergreen Lincoln system has about 90 repeaters it keys up. So when you key it up and all the repeaters are linked, you have to wait almost 2 seconds before you talk. Otherwise, your first couple of words can be cut off as it goes through the system. So yeah, but we tie through Washington and Oregon on the Evergreen Internet tie.
Is that still the 3.3 repeater, Daniel?
I think it is still tied mainly to the Boeing repeater at 145.33.
Great, thanks.
okay. So that is the end of Module 6A. Module 6B, and there's just this one for tonight. So lesson module 6B is all about nets, emergency communications, and special modes and techniques. Let's talk about nets. Net is short for network, and it's evolved over the years to share and exchange information in an organized and efficient way. There's also social nets and traffic nets and emergency and public service nets. There's also ragchew nets. Ragchew is just jibber jabbering on the radio. Traffic nets. Traffic refers to formal messages that are relayed via amateur radio, and they are usually used radiograms to ensure accuracy. There's also National Traffic System, or NTS, and it has procedures and accountability. Emergency and public service nets. Public service nets are for training for emergency networks, training for ham operators as well as emergency groups and managers supported by amateur radio. They have emergency nets and a net structure. You'll always have a net control station, or NCS, and he's like a traffic cop. He or she is like a traffic cop who controls the flow of information. And they have check-in and check-out procedures, and they usually allow for priority or emergency access to net control. And communications discipline is vital in a net. Learn and follow the procedures. Speak only when directed and only to whom directed. Follow through with your commitments. Here's an example of a radiogram. This is a form that is used that you fill out that has you can send it from one person to another, and they don't necessarily need to be a a ham at the other end of the station, or at the other end of the radiogram. So during a field day, we like to fill these out, and you usually send 10 or 12 of them during the day, and it's kind of a lot of fun. When my dad doesn't do ham radio stuff, I send him a radiogram, and they ended up calling the phone number, and then somebody will read this particular message off. But this is a radiogram for Red Cross, so you can let them know your needs. Supporting emergency operations. One of the most important reasons for the existence of amateur radio. You can get involved and use what you have learned. Know where you fit in the overall emergency management team. And examples of emergency communication organizations. You have the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, or RACES. They support civil emergencies and are national in scope. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service, or ARES, supports local and regional in scope, and they also support non-governmental agencies. Emergency communication tips. Don't become a part of the problem. You are a communicator, not a decision or policy maker when you participate. Don't give out unauthorized information. And know your abilities and limitations. Always keep yourself safe. Follow radio discipline and net procedures. And protect personal information. Amateur radio communications is public. A lot of times people have scanners and are just sitting around listening, so never give out personal information. Emergency declarations. The FCC may declare a temporary state of communications emergency. That would include details and conditions and rules to be followed. Specifics communicated through websites and ARRL bulletins and the NTS, and sometimes over the air. Avoid operating on restricted frequencies unless you're engaged in the relief efforts. Making and answering distress calls. Rule number 1, speak in a plain language, never use codes. You would always start out with Mayday, Mayday, Mayday when you're on voice, or SOS if you're using Morse code. You should always identify yourself, give your location, and state the situation, and describe what kind of assistance is required. And then you can also provide other important information. Tactical communications. Use tactical identifiers, which facilitate communications and are location or function specific and transcends operator changes. But the FCC rules still apply, and you should always give your FCC call sign every 10 minutes and when changing operators. So an example of tactical communications is I am part of a neighborhood watch hub. And so sometimes we'll call Beacon Hill, we're the Beacon Hill hub, Beacon Hill Club, West Seattle hub, how copy. But then every 10 minutes we still have to identify with our FCC call sign. So that's an example. You don't use your call signs all the time. You say West Seattle hub, this is Beacon Hill hub, what changes. So that would be like a tactical identifier. But again, every 10 minutes we use our call signs to cover FCC rules. Emergency equipment. You can collect Go kits, which are setting up a portable amateur radio equipment with emergency power sources, and you can also add in personal survivor supplies and equipment. Emergency communication training. If you're going to participate, get training. Actively participate in the training or drill activities such as nets and public service activities. Attend your community meetings and get involved in your community. Take emergency communication courses such as ARRL courses or the FEMA courses on NIMS and other topics, which may be required for your participating in some emergency communication. Awards, DXing, and contacts. On-the-air activities provide incentive to get on the radio. Learn about propagation as you search for specific stations on various bands. You can improve your operating skills and have lots of fun. Some of the awards are WAC, or contacting all 6 inhabited continents.
Continents.
Yeah, continents. I'm still contacting. WAS, or contacting all 50 states, worked all states. Worked all continents, worked all states. I don't know why they just didn't type that in there, make it easier. VUCC is contacting 100 different grid squares on VHF and UHF. DXing is contacting stations far away, a tradition since the first days of radio. On HF, it usually means contacting stations in other countries. On VHF and UHF, it means contacting stations outside your normal coverage area. Contests. Some examples are the ARRL Rookie Roundup, the North American QSO parties, and there's the website, ncjweb.com. And then we also have state QSO parties. And then there's also VHF and UHF contests. And the big one is CQ Worldwide DX Contest. And then you can also find these listed in contest calendars. Field Day is where emergency communications training with a competitive spirit. You set up portable stations and an antenna in the field, mobile or anywhere, and make as many contacts as possible. You can get started with your local club or group. It's a great way to get involved. That is the third Sunday or third weekend of the full weekend of the month of June. Special events. A special event station are set up to commemorate something significant in the local event. Usually stations are demonstration stations set up for public display. Commemorative certificates are sometimes awarded for contacting the stations. Radio direction finding is useful for locating interference or noise sources, and it works best with a directional antenna. Fox hunting competitions offer a fun opportunity to learn and practice. Good training for search and rescue. Amateur satellites, such as OSCAR, which stands for Orbiting Satellites Carrying Amateur Radio. There's different modes, such as FM and analog with single sideband and CW, and also digital. And you also have the International Space Station. Some satellite terms. Uplink is an Earth stations transmit to the satellite. The downlink is where the satellite transmits to stations on the Earth. And a beacon is a signal from the satellite with information about satellite operating conditions. Doppler shift is a shift in the frequency due to relative motion between satellite and Earth station. A LEO is a low Earth orbit. Spin fading is caused by the rotation of a satellite. A PACSat is a packet radio satellite. Tracking software gives your beam heading and times when the satellite is in view. The mode is the bands the satellite is using for an uplink or a downlink. For example, mode UV means that you're using a 70 centimeter uplink and a 2 meter downlink. Other special modes. There's also slow scan TV or SSTV, where you send snapshot pictures, one frame every few seconds. Then there's also amateur TV or ATV. It's similar to commercial TV imagery and uses analog TV format or the NTSC format. You can also use other special modes such as RC remote control radio for your helicopters and get extended distance. For telecommand, and they're usually on the 50 megahertz band. Practice question time. What is the FCC Part 97 definition of a space station? A space station is an amateur station located more than 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface. When do the FCC rules not apply to the operation of an amateur station? FCC rules do not apply. FCC rules are always applied. Then backwards wording there. What do RACES and ARES have in common? RACES and ARES are both organizations that may provide communication during emergencies. Which of the following describes the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, or RACES? That's a big one. RACES is a radio service using amateur frequencies for emergency management or civil defense communications. It's also a radio service using amateur stations for emergency management or civil defense. Wait a sec. They just, looks like they typed that the same.
Well, one is frequencies and one is stations. That's
Oh yeah, frequencies and stations. I was going, ugh. And an emergency service using an amateur operator certified by civil defense organizations as being enrolled in that organization. So all of these choices are correct. Which of the following is an accepted practice to get the immediate attention of a net control when reporting an emergency? Begin your transmission by saying priority or emergency followed by your call sign. Which of the following is an accepted practice for an amateur operator who has checked into the net? Remain on the frequency without transmitting until asked to do so by Net Control Station. Which of the following is a characteristic of good emergency traffic handling? Pass the messages exactly as you receive them. Are amateur station control operations ever permitted to operate outside the frequency privileges of their license class? Yes, but only if necessary in situations involving the immediate safety of human life or protection of property. What information is contained in the preamble of a formal traffic message? That's that radiogram. The information needed to track the message or message number. What is meant by the term check in a reference to a formal traffic message? That is the number of words or word equivalents in the text portion of the message. What is Amateur Radio Emergency Service, or ARES? That is licensed amateurs who have voluntarily registered their qualifications and equipment for communications duty and public service. Who may receive telemetry from a space station?
Anybody.
Anybody can receive the telemetry signal. What is the impact of using too much effective radiated power on a satellite?
Where'd you go, Jim? Hey, Jim.
Still can't hear you, Jim.
You lost, yeah,
He hit the mute button.
I guess he did, yeah.
Let's see. Anybody have a
This,
flashlight?
this is gonna
Strobe?
be the parent freaking, okay, this is gonna be the time azimuth elevation, start maximum elevation, and the end of the path. That's gonna be provided by the satellite tracking programs. It's actually about 2 lines of numbers that deal with the orbit, the
There we go.
elliptical orbit, the decay, and all that sort of stuff.
Jim's back.
Yep,
Jim's back.
my stuff just died, even though
Yeah,
I
you gotta
just
go back
barely.
a question or two. Another question back.
That's it.
We did that one.
Yep.
Anyone can receive the signal.
Yeah.
So,
What happens with the when you give too much power up, you kind of block other users. Say the repeater only had 50 watts and you're running 50 watts into it, then no one else can talk. But if you run 5 watts, then 10 other people can talk. Because what it does is takes a segment of the band and then retransmits it on the other band. And if you have too much power, you're going to dominate the retransmission, and not everybody can talk.
hey, Daniel, do you still want to have people listen to the 9 o'clock net?
Yeah, I was just coming back on that. We got 2 minutes to it.
Yep.
Let me see if I can get it on this right here.
I actually have it queued up here. I'm going to stop
Okay.
the share.
Yeah. Go ahead and do it. What this is a social net, and it they call for 5 or 6 people, and then they have each person goes back and they can talk up to 3 minutes of anything they want to do. It's a general purpose net. It's what Jim had referred to as a ragtag net. It's any subjects are open to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be amateur radio. You can talk about your dog, you can talk about your electric car. If one of the guys there was a president of the Electric Car Association in Seattle and loves drive electric cars. But it's a social net, but it shows you the net protocol. Go ahead, if they're keying up and giving you the information about the net, go ahead and come over talk to me, Jim.
Yeah, it's about 30 seconds delayed.
30
So
seconds away. The net controller will tell you the rules of the net, opening it up, and then it'll open up for people to call back, and then they'll just call in. Then they'll put them on a list and call them back. So there's a couple of things we want to show you on this. This is an actual net that goes at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night. You're going to hear the courtesy tone when the person stops talking. You hear the ka-chunk when the repeater turns off a couple of seconds later. You can sometimes hear doubles, but you hear the politeness. One person talk, then the other person talk, etc. Is it going right now? Or you got the?
it's almost.
Well, good evening and welcome to
Here
the
it
9
is.
o'clock net PM edition for Sunday, February 14th, 2021, Valentine's edition. I am Brian, KE7.
Can everybody hear that?
I am in Redmond, Washington. I'll be your net control station this evening.
This repeater's on Queen Anne Hill. He's in
The
Redmond.
9 o'clock net is hosted right here on the PSRG repeater with an output of 146.96, a negative offset making that 146.36, and the PL tone to key it up
That's
is
this info
103.5.
here.
Now this is a directed net, meaning all traffic flows through the net control station, but we do have an informal subject matter. Tell us about your day, anything that's going on. We want to hear it as long as it's FCC legal and family friendly. Okay, I also want to give a reminder that we have a 3-minute timeout on the repeater, so try to keep the transmissions under 3 minutes. Gives a chance for everyone to get a chance to get in and say hello. So let's go ahead and separate this into some groups. So up at the top, let's start with some in and outs. So if you are IO, just want to say hi real quick, no problem with that. So we want to hear from you. So if you're in and out, please come now, call sign and first name.
Whiskey 1 Tango Kilo Romeo Russell.
Kilo Echo 7 Echo Whiskey Zulu, Dimitri in Woodinville, IO.
Hey, I got a double out of that. I did get Russell, W1TKR. Good evening to you. And I also got Dimitri, KE7EWZ. Thank you for stopping by tonight. More in and outs, please.
KG7 Fox Whiskey Bravo, IO.
Hey, there's Bill. Good evening to you, KG7 Fox Whiskey Bravo. Have a good one. More in and outs, please.
Alpha Golf 7 Lima Romeo. Cody with an IO.
Hey, good evening to you, Cody. I've got your IO, Alpha Golf 7 Lima Rodeo. More in and outs, please.
Kilo India 7 Papa Mike Golf Devon.
Devin, I've got your in and out, KI7 Papa Mike Golf. Thank you for stopping by tonight. Okay, we are doing more in and outs. Please come now, call sign first name.
Alpha Golf 7 Charlie X-Ray, Lloyd, IO.
Hope Tacoma's treating you well. Lloyd, I've got your IO, Alpha Golf 7 Charlie X-Ray. Thank you for stopping by tonight. More in and outs, please.
Nick Control, you've got a bit of a whirring sound on your audio as well, if it goes right straight to you.
Okay, thanks for that. I may need to adjust my antenna here, which I'll do when we get to the first round. But hopefully everyone can hear me well enough. So with that, let's go ahead to the in and outs. Add mobile and low power stations, 5 watts or less, or mobile, please, or in and outs. Please come now, call sign first name.
Kilo 9 Bravo Delta Charlie, Brooks, in and out.
That was a good example of
Out of that double, I did get
double.
Brooks, K9 BDC. Who was behind Brooks?
So in that case, Brooke has the stronger signal and captured the
Nothing here. Do
repeater.
we have any other mobile low power or in and out? Please come now.
KF7, GDE, David, in and out, North Seattle.
Okay, there may have been a double. The sounded like it. David, I did get you, KF7, GDE. Thank you for your IO. Any more? Multiple low power enemies, please come down.
This is Wowza, Whiskey Alpha Zero, Zulu Alpha Whiskey, low power HT in Ravenna.
Okay, I may have doubled with someone who's there, but I did get Wowza, Whiskey Alpha Zero, Z Alpha Oscar. There we go. And, okay, so more stations, please.
KJ7, UAT.
Quebec Whiskey Zulu, Jason in Kingston with an IO.
Okay, there was a double. I got KJ7 UAT. And QWZ Jason, I'm forgetting the prefix of yours. Can you just come back with the full call?
No problem. Kilo Juliet 7, Quebec Whiskey Zulu, Jason in Kingston with an IO. Have a good night.
Notice how he's using the phonetic alphabet to give his
Hey,
call
got you
sign.
perfectly there. That time, Jason, KJ7 QWZ, I've got your IO. Waves over to you. Okay, more IOs, mobile and low power. Please come now.
Why don't we take a break there and finish up the module and maybe come back when they're handing things back and forth. As you can hear, that was a real good example of the net control station. He was the traffic cop. He was directing people to come now or wait. And it was sharing back and forth. And you could also, it was a good example a couple of times where people doubled. They call it doubling, where both of us are transmitting at the same time, and you can't hear. You can only hear the stronger of the two signals. So there's just a few more on this, and we'll finish up. So again, like Daniel was mentioning, if you put too much power on a satellite uplink, you're going to block access by the other users. Okay, continuing on with the satellite stuff. Which of the following are provided by satellite tracking programs? And this was the big list of maps showing the real-time position on the satellite track over the Earth, the time, the azimuth and elevation of the start, the maximum altitude and the end of the pass, and the apparent frequency of the satellite transmission, including effects of Doppler shift. What mode of transmission is commonly used by amateur radio satellites? SSB, FM, and CW or data are the common modes. What is a satellite beacon? A satellite beacon is a transmission from a satellite that contains its status information. Which of the following are inputs to a satellite tracking program? Satellite tracking programs require updated Keplerian elements.
Now, this is those two lines of numbers I was talking about earlier that talks about the elliptical orbit, the decay, and all that sort of stuff. It tells you when it's going to be in our space, so we can talk through it. And those are the numbers you put into the satellite tracking program.
Yep. With regards to satellite communications, what is Doppler shift? Doppler shift is an observed change in signal frequency caused by the relative motion between the satellite and the Earth station. So anytime you hear Doppler, just think of the sound that a train would make as you're watching it approach. It makes a higher pitch, and then as it passes you, it goes lower. It's the same thing with the satellite and the Earth station. What is meant in a statement that a satellite is operating in U/V mode? The satellite uplink is on the UHF or 70 centimeter band, and the downlink is on the 2 meter or VHF band. What causes spin fading of the satellite signals? That is the rotation of the satellite and its antennas.
They rifle a satellite through space, so the antenna sometimes points to Earth, sometimes points to the sun, sometimes back to the Earth. And that's the spin we're talking about. So sometimes the antennas are pointing away from you, but only for a brief a second or so. And that way you'll be able to communicate.
What do the initials LEO, L-E-O, tell you about an amateur satellite? The satellite is in a low Earth orbit. And you'll also sometimes hear that there are MEOs, or middle Earth orbit, and HEO, or high Earth orbit. But most of our communication is in the LEO orbits.
Which means that's in our skies for about 20 minutes and goes over top of us. It's not geocentric. We are supposed to be getting a geocentric amateur satellite, which is going to be up higher in the atmosphere.
So the low Earth orbit is around 100 to 120 miles?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Those new Starlink satellites that are running in low orbit as well.
Yeah. Which of the following is a good way to judge whether your uplink power is neither too low or too high? By listening to the strength of the downlink signal should be about the same as the beacon signal. Which of the following methods is used to locate the sources of noise interference or jamming? That is called radio direction finding. Which of these items would be useful for a hidden transmitter hunt? You would need a directional antenna. What operating activity involves contacting as many stations as possible during a specified period of time? Contest. Or you could also say field day. Field day is not a contest. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is.
Just ask Ivy.
Yeah. Which of the following is good practice when contacting another station in a radio contest? Send only the minimum information needed for proper identification and the contest exchange. Don't start talking about the weather.
Yeah. In field day, it's a one day, 24-hour event that takes place on the fourth weekend of June. And we got thousands and thousands of stations across the nation and around the world participate in it. So what they want to know there is your call sign. And like we do, Mike and Key would be K7LED, WWA.
Stations. Yeah, Western Washington.
6A. Yeah, 6A, WWA. So 6 was the number of stations we have at that location on the different bands. And then A is a type of operation. We're using battery power. So we're not on commercial power. So that E would be used from an emergency operating center So we got A, B, C, and D, and E, and F on the classifications. And some people use actually 24 stations.
Yeah.
Most of those guys have reduced it at this point. But we generally run 6A at Mike and Keefe, and the guys are out there for a week at Port Flagler and Port Townsend. So they have a lot of fun before the contest starts. And you only have like 12 hours, I think, to set up. And before the contest, you can actually set your towers up, your antennas up before. So it's a week-long party we can have, a camping party.
Yep.
Right, Jim?
We call it.
It's a big Boy Scout get together in a way. But I was going to say we use the generator, not batteries, most of the time.
Yep.
We also call the week right before it radio camp, because everybody brings up their kits and their things that they want to work on that they haven't had time to work on, and it's a good time to camp with other ham radio people and share the camaraderie and dust off all the cobwebs if you have them on your different radio stuff, and play with antennas, learn new things. It's a lot of fun.
Put up experimental antennas.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a 500 and what was it, 60-some foot loop antenna.
Loop antenna.
Two years ago. Yeah.
And that's when you can get out there with your little satellite antennas and try to hunt down the satellites. Have the contest. I got him. I got in, and like 3 or 4 people are out there, and you don't feel such a nut because everybody's doing it. What type of transmission is indicated by the term NTSC? That is the analog fast scan color TV signal. What is meant by the term NCS when used in a net operation? We just heard NCS tonight. That is the net control station. What does the term traffic refer to in net operation? That is formal messages exchanged by net stations. And that is the end of this module. Actually, the end of tonight.
What happens with a formal net situation? They'll say the guy originates it in Seattle and it goes up to the Seattle net. Then that may go down to the Denver net and back over to the Louisiana net, and then over to like Foreman down there in Louisiana, local. They try to get it to a station within 50 miles of the intended person, and then they'll do a phone call to them.
Yep.
It's a free system where we ran for years and years and years. The Mars, the military also has a real similar thing they've done for the servicemen for years and years and years. A lot of our operators also are Mars operators.
So earlier tonight, we talked about grid squares. And here's a good place to go to find your grid square. And this is a Maidenhead grid square locator map. And you can actually put in your call sign. And you'll see me. And that's where I'm located. My grid square is Charlie November 87 Uniform Mike. And that's that's exactly where I live. And they actually go down, you can actually get further down into, there's 2 more alpha digits here. But that's a good place to go to get your grid square locator, and it also gives your latitude and longitude.
With Field Day, we use Western Washington kind of like as our locator on the situation. Other contests will use this Maidenhead grid number, CN87, and sometimes they actually go more than just the first 4 digits, the 2 letters and 2 numbers. But the whole world is identified with that system.
Yep. And let's see, up further north. There we go. This is where This is Morrowstone Island, and this is where the Fort Flagler State Park is located, and it is really nice and quiet over here. We operate up here on the bluff that is right up here on the top. Is there? Let me put the
You're,
satellite.
you're, okay, yeah, you're, yep. Go north.
Yep. So this is the actual bluff that we work from, and then the CW, like the CW beach, is down here, and they operate the CW guys, and you get excellent signal because you got the Puget Sound right there, the salt water.
Salt water is great.
And then our radio camp is down here in this little circle area. This is the wagon wheel, they call it, and then there's a covered shelter here where we do the coffee and donuts, and everybody does a potluck dinner. And then up here, if you don't want to camp or can't camp, they have a barracks that we rent out the barracks up here, and you can stay in the barracks, and they've got beds and, you know, running water, flushing toilets. Out here in the camping area, we always have those honey buckets that are not honey. But anyway, that's Fort Flagler here. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get back to normal and do that, but I have my doubts this year, unfortunately.
This is free to club members.
Yeah. Yep. So that's all I had. Do you guys want to hear a little bit further into the net? Here,
Yes, yeah, Jim, let's go ahead and do that, because what he was doing there was just grabbing the quick in and out people.
Yeah.
And went through a real quick list. Now you're going to hear where he's grabs 4 or 5 and have them talk, and then 4 or 5 and have them talk. Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll do that for a few more minutes because we finished up early.
Set up. Maybe he'll be right back around. Anyway, so we are looking for a new round of check-ins. We want to hear from all of you.
No, perfect timing.
PTT and
Good timing.
Use it. We want to hear from you, so please come now. Call sign and first name.
KJ7 KSX, John and Enumclaw.
Jerry with an IO.
Okay, so I did get John, KJ7KSX, and I did get Jerry, KB7CHY. Jerry, are you in tonight? Can I just double check real quick?
Say again?
You did come in as a double with John, so I just want to see if you're IO by chance or if you're in tonight. Jerry?
KB7CHY, IO.
Okay, that's what I wanted to double check. I just wasn't sure if you were in or if you were in and out. All right, thanks for that check in there tonight, Jerry. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, more stations, please, for the 9 o'clock net. Please come now.
KB9IQX, Amy.
There
You hear that courtesy tone there, B?
KB9IQX. More stations, please.
KJ7 Tango Tango Yankee, Jeff and Monroe.
Okay, there may have been a double, but I did get Jeff, KJ7 Tango Tango Yankee. More stations, please.
KX2CW.
And there's Joan, KX2CW. More stations, please.
KJ7MUE, Zach.
My personal preference is to wait for the tone before I jump in.
Any more for this go around?
Okay, so now he's got a good list going.
Nothing heard. That is 5. So let's go ahead and run this up to the top. John, how are you? KJ7KSX. Go ahead there, John.
Hey, Brian. Thanks as always, for running the net. Really appreciate that. Nice, relaxing Sunday here. It's
been a nice run of days. I got my second vaccine on Thursday morning, and by Thursday afternoon I had a runny nose and was blowing and went to bed at 8 o'clock and kind of tired and woke up at midnight with a sore throat and a headache and a cough, and went back to sleep and woke up with the same on at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, it was not too bad. By 6 o'clock in the morning, mostly gone. Oh, when I woke up at 3, my arm was sore. Prior to that, nothing. First vaccine, 0, absolutely 0, nothing, not even a sore arm. And arm was swollen, and
So again, this is more of a social network. There's other nets that are more emergency based, but I'll go ahead and turn it back on. Just so you know, they talk about anything and everything. As you can see, it's how they feel.
today woke up just totally feeling great. Fatigue was gone and all that stuff, so not too bad. And enjoying the snow. Lots of drifts out here in Enumclaw. Had drifts as high as about 2-3 feet around my house and doors, but it's been just a good. I'm hoping we don't get too much ice overnight, but just a nice weekend in watching movies and relaxing. And I hope everybody's doing okay and with the snow and ice and not falling or slipping or any of that stuff. And 7-3s to all. And yeah, back to you, Brian. Back to the net. KJ7KSX, John in Enumclaw.
Hey, John. Yeah, my wife is here listening too. She got the second vaccine, so she was just like, because like she was like, I don't want to say deathly ill, like that would be totally overstating it, but she was miserable for about 36 hours. It hit her really, really bad. But then she was fine. So, hey, glad it wasn't too bad for you and stuff, and glad you got that second vaccine dose in there. So, and yeah, snowdrifts of 2-3 feet. You know, I'm not too worried about the ice. I mean, I'm looking outside the temperature right now. My little thermometer says 36 degrees, and I don't think it's supposed to even get below freezing tonight. So hopefully not too bad with ice and whatnot. That's always my biggest fear for even the power outages and whatnot is ice on the trees and whatnot, and then the limbs start cracking. So let's cross our fingers that doesn't happen, and we can just. It's fun to have a snow day, but I'm also okay with it melting away at this point. So hey, very cool. Thanks for the check-in there, John. Okay, next up on the 9 o'clock net, Amy. How are you? KB9IQX. Go ahead there, Amy.
Well, good evening, everybody.
If you notice that
Good
John
evening,
signed
Brian.
with his
I
call
feel
sign,
so remiss.
and he was in Enumclaw,
Like
and
it
we've
has
all had
been a while
Tacoma,
since I have
the net controls Redmond, and we've had Queen Anne people, all that area. So it's a region wide repeater, even though it's not on a high mountain.
Yeah, WW7 PSR, their main location is the Columbia Tower, and then they have links into several different neighborhood repeaters. So like Daniel said, they're a good linked station. Just a quick note on our Mike and Key nets. So if you go to the Mike and Key website, you'll see that on Wednesday night we have our technical net, and they give the description on a 2-meter repeater with a frequency of 146.82 and a PL tone of 103.5, and we do technical discussions. And then on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, we have on our other repeater, our 220 repeater, with a frequency of 224.12 and a PL tone of 103.5. This is a casual and informal net. And then on nightly at 7:30 p.m. they started a social net, which is similar to the PSRG where it's just come and discuss things in a round table. And it's called round table because you just kind of go in that circle. The net control gets, you heard him say, okay, I got 5 in that group. You usually get 5 or 10 people, and then you go to the top of the list and you say, hey, what's going on, Bob? And Bob will come on, and then when they're done, then it goes back to net control. Hey, Daniel, what's up in your neck of the woods? And then when Daniel's done, it comes back to net control. And hey, Jim, what's new in your area? Because social net. And there's other nets. I do Seattle ACS, which is more of a emergency communications net, and on those we run it just similar. We just do a check-in, give our call sign and updates, and we can also do WinLink emails to check in.
Jim, is that an open call sign, or is he going through a list of call signs and calling you out?
On the ACS station, they usually look for members first, members of Seattle ACS, and then they do the by call sign suffix. And they say, we're going to run our net by call sign suffix. Stations ending in Alpha through Foxtrot, come now. And then you get all of the people that have AE7G, or like, the suffix part. So, and then it would be Alpha through Foxtrot, Golf through Juliet, Kilo through Oscar, or I think it was, or I don't remember, but they break it up in groups. Yeah. And then after members of ACS, then they call for any visitor stations.
And that's when anybody else can call in. Yeah.
That's when anybody else can call in, or associates. Sometimes we get people from the Red Cross like to check into our net also. And we meet up on the PSR. They link into that and the ACS. So if you go up here and listen on Monday, go to this website, listen in on Monday night at 7 p.m. From 7 p.m. to 7:30 is the Seattle ACS, and then at 7:30, then it switches over to the PSRG net, and they run for another half hour.
About every half hour, there's a different net there till 9 o'clock. The 9 o'clock net will run about an hour. Your Seattle ACS will do 30 to 40 check-ins or more in a half hour. So it moves along pretty quickly.
Yeah.
On it. Some nets have a list of names or call signs they call through. Then they open up the visitors. And if you're calling from A through F, it's similar to the PSRG we just heard. Anybody in that thing can call in, and they'll take them. And when we heard it, he's a really good operator because he get a net control because he can recognize stations, he can recognize voices, then he can get all the call signs. And remembering the call sign is going to be one of the difficult things when you first get on the radio. It's okay. We all have problems.
Yeah. Yep. So on 7:30 PSRG, they go through the net roster, and the more that you check in, the more you bubble up towards the top of the list. These are the people that have, and you can see they're moving up, or they haven't checked in and they move down. And then as you get down towards the bottom, these are people that haven't checked in quite a while. Like this person dropped 35 positions. So you just kind of keep people, and it's a long list of people that join into that net. But again, it's you got different nets for different topics. Some of them are technical, some of them are informal or social net. They've got boaters net, they've got weather nets. I've listened to the Red Cross net where they practice the hospital to hospital. All kind. The Seattle ACS is auxiliary communications, and we also There's also GMRS for people that are in the neighborhood watch clubs. You can get GMRS radios, and those are a 10-year license, and they're more for your family to use. And there's actual repeaters on those too.
But not nearly what we have. We
Oh,
have
yeah,
like
not-
almost 450 repeaters in Western Washington alone,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's thousands across the nation.
Yep.
And almost all of them. I mean, I think there's only 3 that are closed in Western Washington. So all these repeaters are free to be used. And
Yep.
what you try to do is not interfere with the net.
Yep, and I'll post in here if I can find it again. There it is. This is the place that I like to go, radioreference.com. And if you go up here to databases and amateur radio database, you can look up by call signs and find the information on radio call signs. Or if you go here to frequency, this has all 50 states, and as you zoom in to King County, and it gives you public safety, mutual aid, transit, hospitals, municipalities, educations, and then trunked radio systems for business and things like that. Then if you go back up, so this is good for your scanners and stuff. If you go back up and click over here on the top, the amateur radio one, these are all of the King County amateur radio stations that are by 2 meters, 70 centimeters. It gives a little description. And you notice that these are the frequencies. This is the output of the frequency. And if you want to see the input, you click up here and you say, show me the input frequency. So here's the example of where you'll see the mic and key. Our station is 146.82, but the input frequency or the offset is 146.22. And you notice that we have a PL tone of 103.5. And then you can also see that we are an FM station. Here's Daniel's neck of the woods down in Federal Way. It has the D-Star system, the Federal Way, and it's at a 146.84, and the input is 146.24. So this is a good site to go to, and again, you just go to databases, frequency database, and then you'll see the map of the US. You go to your state. For those of you in Florida, you can go to Florida, go to the county level and then the city level, and it'll give you all of the county home, which has all your public safety, ambulances, municipalities. Oh, I forgot Indian reservations there, education. Then down at the bottom is all your business trunk systems like Amazon, Boeing, all of that. But then for amateur stuff, go back up to the top and click over here on the amateur radio button, and you'll get all of the 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 23 centimeters. You even have the DMR stuff up here. So that's a good site. And it's free. Well, free in a sense. You can actually register, and when you register and pay a couple of bucks for it, you can then download directly the database and the frequencies. So I went ahead and used that download feature. So that is all I've got for tonight. Thanks,
That's a
everybody.
really great reference, Jim. Thanks.
Yeah. And you don't have to pay a subscription. I forgot. Hang on a sec. Let me bring this back up. Okay, where'd I go? Share. So for the Western Washington repeaters owners, this is where the where you can find the band plan of our area and the recommended use of the spectrum, the band plan area here. And you see that it starts out down at the 10 meter, 6 meter, and these are different segments that they're suggesting to use. So EME, CW, or EME, that's Earth, Moon, Earth. General SSB, or propagation beacons. Then they have repeaters. So these are suggested band areas, and a simplex area. And here's our magic 146.52. That's the national simplex. And you can see that it goes into the 222s and 70 centimeter. Oh, they're migrating over to the different document there. You can also download, where was that? There was a way to download it, or right there. So you go over to repeater coordination. They've updated this website since the last time I went to it. You go over to coordination files, and this is really cool because you can download the entire repeater list as a CSV file, or they've also already set it up for what they call the chirp file. And chirp is a good programming, it's a free programmer that covers a real long list of different manufacturers' radios. But that being said, Daniel has some really good deals on a Baofeng radio that already has all of this stuff done for you. So here's, you go up and you download a zip file, and then you plug it into the chirp program, and you can program your handhelds that way.
Hey, Jim, could you go back to the radioreference.com website and go back how you came up with those? Because when I hit database and amateur radio database, it's just a call sign lookup. Or
yeah.
How did you get to the list?
So the amateur radio call sign lookups, this is just, it's like QRZ. This is just to look up call signs. Let's look up Canary, see who's Canary in this area. And it'll just look up. Yeah, it's slower than QRZ. So never mind. Let's stop that.
How did you get to the list you
frequencies?
Had up on the website? You had it up on the screen, and it had all kinds of info that looked great.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's my dad, and there's me, and then there's this guy, somehow not related to me, but he's down in Puyallup. So to get the frequencies, I was showing you how to look at the radio database for just it's like QRZ. But for frequencies for scanners, go to frequency database.
Right.
And then it takes you to the US home. Then you go into, no, let's go to Florida this time. And I forgot what area were you were in Fort Lauderdale. There's Fort Lauderdale, or Broward County. So for Broward County, here's the search and rescue, medical, Department of Detention.
So you just double clicked on that orange
on the map.
Yeah, so double click on the area that you want to go to. So we're looking at Broward County.
Yep.
And then as you scroll down, you see all of the different services and municipalities and all of that good stuff, and local cities and things like that. Port Everglades, businesses, the tribe's school, all of that good stuff. And this is for your scanners.
All
But
right.
then to get to the amateur radio, you come up here to this top area
I
and
got
go over here to amateur radio. And there's the amateur radio frequencies for the 2 meters, the 222 and the 440s. So here's like Pompano Beach, Gold Coast Amateur Radio Association. They've got 3 right there in their W4BUG. Same thing. And if you want to see the input frequencies, go up here and say shown. And then it'll show you the input frequency and the output frequency. And then it'll show what the tone is right here.
Gotcha. That's really powerful.
It is. It's an awesome site. And then if you register up here and pay a couple of bucks, then you can go in there and
You can download into your handy talkies.
download everything into your handy talkie.
But do you have to be licensed first before you can register?
You have to be
No,
licensed before you transmit.
transmit.
Oh.
Yeah, you can go up here and register and join in. And when you're joined in, then you can go up here and actually download the database. So if I go, oops. So if I go back here to this one again, then I go over here to amateur radio, and since I logged in, then I can do download. You can download all of the CSVs for this area and plug things in.
Now, Jim, when you were down in Fort Lauderdale, I didn't see any way to look up your piano tuners for Fort Lauderdale. So.
Well, yeah, if we're down here in Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, we just go into the Broward County area, and then amateur radio. These are all of the amateur radio clubs that are down in that area.
Man, that's really good.
Yeah. And then you go over here to the downloads, and when you're a member, you can download the frequencies. Now the cool thing is, if you don't want to do that, you can, by all means, do one of these. Let me just highlight, copy, and paste. But boy, it sure is a lot easier to just hit a download and
Do
jump
100
right
at a
to it.
time.
Do 100 at a time. Forgot.
So what's advantage of the paid one from ARRL that they have for your computers and for your phones?
It's very similar to this, but the ARRL is just ham, if I remember right. It doesn't have scanner stuff. And this is what I signed up for, $30 for a year. And it also allows me to, I mean, I can use it on my scanner. Oh, look at that. It's a good thing I looked at this. It expires in 70 days. So I'm going to have to renew on this. But you can also go over here and what's cool is you can go into live audio. And you can do the same thing. So if we wanted to go down to Broward County, we can get a list of live feeds listed for Broward County, and we can listen to Sheriff Dispatch. So you got a different feeds that go on. A lot of these are public service, and occasionally you'll have here's one that's an amateur radio. So there are a few amateur radio stations that share their feed down here. We were talking about doing this in Mike and Key, but we decided, let's not really go for that. because it would require somebody to dedicate a computer link and their radio. So if we go to King County, the station that we were listening to was down here, Puget Sound Amateur Radio Repeaters. But you can go and listen to Seattle PD. Here's the PSRG repeater that we were just listening to, and it gives the status. So a lot of fun stuff. For me, it was worth having a 30-day or 360-day for $30. Then they also have it broken out up here. So if you're an aviation or a rail fan, amateur or a marine, they've got other browse things. And what's cool is it also has archives. So if you hear, oh, there was a big pile up on I-5 today at 12 noon, you can go into the archives and specify the hunt for listen to radio traffic back at that time. And a lot of times during the 5 o'clock news or the news feeds, you'll actually see that where they run the audio, and down below it has a little disclaimer down there from Broadcastify. So tons of fun.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yep. Yeah, and as we get towards the end of the class or something, we might try to do a quick little round table net, practice to get you into the idea of how to run the net, how to talk on the net, things like that. We can do a little sample. And then as you get licensed, then we can actually get on a repeater and do an actual net that one of those nights.
On the call signs on here, you memorize your own call sign first. And when you're talking to someone, if you have a piece of paper, just write their call sign down. It may take you 2 or 3 times hearing their call sign to get it, whether it's a KD7 or KB7 or KI7. Get the first half of it and then get the last 3, ABC, XQY on it. You may just write half of it down at a time on it, because you're going to have a letter or 2 in front of the number, then 1 to 3 letters after the number. So just have a piece of paper there and write it down so you can get it back, because that is one of the more difficult things when you're starting the conversation up, to get the other person's call sign right. You don't have to have it. You can just say over and identify yourself.
Yep.
But it's nice to refer to them as the call sign. Everybody likes to be called by their name, and that's kind of our name in amateur radio.
Yep. And it helps to have a little tiny book around and keep a little log. I usually don't do it if I'm on a repeater, but when you get into HF, you're definitely gonna use your call signs a lot more. But you still have to every 10 minutes give your FCC call sign.
What the net controller does on the PSRG net there, he identifies at least every 3 callers. That's how he keeps track of himself.
Yep.
And the other thing is when a caller finishes their talk, their 3 minutes or less, then they identify with a call sign. And that's the sign for the net controller to take back over.
I was gonna
do something else.
Find my NCS here. I had a net script and I can't easily find it. But when you volunteer to become the net control station, the club will send you an NCS, a net control station template or a script to follow. So it's usually, well, let's try. Yeah, I still can't find it. I thought it might be up on the. It usually starts out with, "Hello, this is the K7 LED technical net. We meet every 7:30 on Wednesday evening, and we hold the net on a 2-meter repeater at 146.82 with a PL tone of 103.5. At this time, I'd like to start check-ins with, however they have a definite script, and as you get ready to do net control, you'll work with somebody and they'll send you the script or the recommendations. And a lot of time they'll have a roster too. Like in my ACS, there'll be like 3 or 4 sheets with the call signs and the names and what city they're located, or parts of the city that they're located in. And in ACS, we have the Northwest, we have them in sectors. So Northwest, Northeast, Central, Central West, Southeast, Southwest. That's how we do our ACS net, and then the call sign. And so they'll have a roster, and then you can use the roster and, check off as people check in. And like you heard on the PSRG, if you group them in like groups of 5, then it makes it easier. So when I was NCS on the ACS one, I just put 1 1 1 1 1 for 5 people, and then 2 2 2 2 2, and it gave me that group. I knew who was in what group, and then as I called them off, then I would put a little check mark that I got back to them. So that was one way that I kind of remembered it.
The other thing you want to do if you're a net control is you want to say like KE7 JIM has traffic. So you say I'll get back to you in your traffic, or you can take the traffic right now. Either way, but you'll do an extra mark with if they're that station wants to tell the net something.
Yeah, and for ACS we always call. Is there at the beginning we identify ourselves, what net we are, what our tones and frequencies are when we meet, and then the first thing we say, is there any emergency or priority traffic for the net? Come now. And we wait and we make sure that there's no emergency, no priority traffic. Then the second thing that we do is we'll call out, is there any stations with announcements for tonight for the net? And it's usually like, oh, hey, the next club meeting is this Saturday at 10:30.
And that's called routine traffic.
Yeah, routine traffic.
Not emergency or priority, it's routine. Yeah.
Yep. And then the other ones would be stuff like, hey, we're going to be replacing the batteries at the Columbia Tower next Thursday, so the station will, like Daniel said, routine traffic. And then they'll do okay, now let's do net check-ins, members first, with the suffix ending in Alpha through Foxtrot, Golf through Kilo, Lima through Oscar, Peter, or what's P? Oh, my brain's gone blank. Papa, yeah, Papa through Zulu. Had that senior moment there. But yeah, tons of fun.
I was going to add one other quick little thing at the towards the beginning of our evening. One of the questions was on simplex and what the definition was and so forth. When you're working with a handy talkie and it comes with a rubber duck, which is, what is it, Daniel, about 5 inches long or something. Yeah. You can get one that's 16 or 18 inches long, and then you can get a telescoping one. The point I wanted to make is with a handy talkie on simplex, you might not be able to hit a station with, let's say, a rubber duck, but as soon as you're up another 3 or 4 feet, all of a sudden you're full quieting. So with those frequencies of VHF and UHF, elevation is everything, and the antenna gives you part of that elevation, and then where you're physically located is huge as well.
Yep.
So, and that's true for repeaters as well, but when you're simplex, it's especially important. So,
This is a little thing that I recently bought, and it has the little tiny telescopic antenna. Yeah, I'm not going to get out very far listening on this, but if I plug in, a longer whip antenna, you can see this one that I bought for my handy talkie, and this one gets out and brings in the signal a lot better.
yeah. So with the higher frequencies, that line of sight, the elevation and the length is huge. So.
Yep. That's why I chuckle when they send these little test things with little tiny antennas. I'm going, you're not going to get anything with that little, even if you extend it all the way, it's not going to work. You're going to want to plug it in.
I think it tests your patience instead. So.
That it does. Yeah, this is a signal analyzer, a spectrum analyzer that I just picked up.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Yep.
Well,
Okie dokie.
That's a good evening.
So before I let everybody out, next chapter is chapter 7. And let me see how long that is. Chapter 7. Oh, it's really short. 17 pages and only a little over maybe 40 minutes of video. Okay.
By the way, is the OG who does the videos, is that his son? No.
No.
That does the intro. He's something else.
Yeah. Yeah, he had an assistant, Wanamaker or Wanawalker or something. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's
helpful.
I'm almost wondering if we shouldn't try to stick licensing regulations, chapter 7, and operating regulations and do 7 and 8 because they are really kind of short. And even the videos that you watch, I think we might stick those together. Let's try to do that. Daniel, what are your thoughts on 7 and 8? The two regulations, get them both done at the same time? And then that would leave just safety at the very end.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do chapter 7 and chapter 8, the licensing regulations and operating regulations, because the syllabus is really short. 29 pages altogether, those two, and maybe an hour's worth
of video.
Okay, I will send an update email and post tonight's video tomorrow because it takes me a while to transcode it. Thanks, George, Elaine. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.